There's a college in Ohio where the students have an unspoken rule. No one talks about it during orientation. No professor mentions it in class. No university brochure has ever printed it. But every single student at Kenyon College knows it, learns it within their first week, and never forgets it. Do not cross the gate at midnight. That's it. That's the whole rule. Simple. Almost laughably simple, until you ask why and watch what happens to the face of whoever you asked. Because they don't laugh, they don't brush it off, they don't call it a silly superstition. They go quiet.
Eyes shift, and then, slowly, carefully, like someone choosing every single word, they say, "Just don't." This is Kenyon College, one of the most prestigious universities in America. Founded in 1824, 200 years of history inside these walls. 200 years of students who studied here, laughed here, lived here, and some who never left. Because Kenyon College is not just a place of learning, it is a place of accumulation, of grief that never fully dissolved, of tragedy that soaked into the stone and never dried, of 9 students who went to sleep one February night and woke up inside a fire with no way out, of a young diver who went into the water and never came back up the same way, of a gate, old iron, weathered stone, perfectly ordinary looking, that the entire campus treats like the entrance to something it does not have a name for. You are about to hear what really happens at Kenyon College after dark, what the university does not put in its prospectus, what the older students whisper to the newer ones, what the maintenance staff stopped filing reports about because nothing they wrote could explain it, and what 9 voices, tramped on the other side of a gate for over 70 years, have been desperately trying to tell anyone willing to stand still long enough to listen. Gambier, Ohio. Population, just over 2,000 people. A small town so quiet, so still, so perfectly tucked away in the Ohio countryside that most people in the state have never heard of it. One road in, one road out. Surrounded on all sides by open fields and old forest, in the particular kind of silence that only exists in places far enough from cities that the world forgets to be loud. It is, by every measure, the last place on earth you would expect to find something dark. And yet, Kenyon College has been called one of the most haunted campuses in the United States. Not by tabloids, not by ghost-hunting television shows looking for ratings, by researchers, by historians, by the kind of people who spend their careers looking for rational explanations and occasionally encounter things they cannot explain rationally. Kenyon has been investigated, documented, studied, and every single time, the conclusion is the same. Something is here. Something that has been here for a very long time. Something that has no intention of leaving. To understand what that something is, you have to understand what Kenyon College has been through. Because places do not become haunted for no reason. Places become haunted because of what happens inside them, because of the weight of accumulated suffering, because grief, when it has nowhere to go, stays. And Kenyon College has given grief more than enough reasons to stay. Start with the gate, the one the students call the Gates of Hell. It stands at the entrance to Middle Path, the long, unpaved walkway that cuts through the heart of Kenyon's campus like a spine. Iron and stone. 200 years old, it has watched every student who ever attended this college walk past it, has stood through every Ohio winter, every thunderstorm, every ordinary Tuesday afternoon, and every extraordinary night. And for 200 years, it has been keeping something in, or perhaps keeping something out. No one is entirely sure which. The legend is this: cross the gate at midnight. Cross it when the church bells are ringing. Cross it when both happen at the same time. And whatever you are on this side of the gate, whatever makes you, you, will not be entirely yours anymore when you reach the other side. Something will have taken a piece, something that has been standing just beyond that threshold, patient, quiet, waiting for exactly the right moment, for exactly the right person. But the gate is only the beginning. Because Kenyon College does not have one ghost. It does not have one tragedy. It does not have one unexplained event that people have quietly agreed to stop discussing. It has layers, layer beneath layer beneath layer, like an archaeological site of suffering. Go back to February 27th, 1949. A winter night. Students asleep in Old Kenyon Dormitory. No reason to be afraid. No reason to think that night would be different from any other night. And then, fire. Moving faster than fire should move, through hallways that should have contained it, past doors that should have held it back. 9 students, 9 young men with names and futures and families waiting at home, gone before the sun came up. The building was rebuilt. Students moved back in. The college continued the way colleges do, the way life insists on continuing, even when it probably should pause and ask itself some serious questions first. But 9 young men, Robert, William, Frederick, David, William, Sherman, Eugene, Barry, David, did not continue. They stayed in the hallways, in the rooms, in the sounds that students have been reporting for over 70 years. Screaming that has no source, lights that flicker in specific rooms on no predictable schedule. A presence described the same way by every person who has ever felt it, of people who are desperately, urgently trying to find a way out of a building they have been trapped in since 1949. And then there is the one they call the greenhouse ghost. A diver, a student, a young man who loved the water enough to dedicate himself to it, until the water did not give him back. He did not leave either. He walks the pool corridors still. Wet footprints on dry floors. Showers turning on in empty buildings at 3 a.m. The maintenance staff stopped being surprised by it years ago. They simply write in their logs, the usual pool situation, and move on. This is Kenyon College, 200 years old, achingly beautiful, deeply, unmistakably haunted. A place where the past does not stay in the past, where the dead do not stay quiet, where a gate at the entrance to campus has been warning students for generations not to cross it, not at midnight, not when the bells are ringing, not when something on the other side is already waiting for you. Eli Warren had walked past the gate 100 times, maybe more. It stood at the entrance to Middle Path, the long, unpaved walkway that serves as the spine of Kenyon's campus. At first glance, it looked like any other ornamental college gate. Old iron, stone pillars on either side, weathered by 2 centuries of Ohio winters. The kind of gate that looks like it belongs on a postcard. The kind of gate that looks like it means nothing. Except that no one walked through it after 11 at night. Not students, not faculty, not the groundskeeping staff who were on campus at all hours. Eli had noticed this in his first week as a freshman. He had assumed it was coincidence. By sophomore year, he knew it wasn't. He was a writer. He noticed patterns, and the pattern around that gate was absolute. So in the fall of his junior year, when his creative nonfiction professor assigned a long-form investigative piece on a subject of personal significance, Eli Warren did not hesitate. He wrote "The Gates of Hell" at the top of a blank page and started asking questions. The first person he asked was Nora. She was a history major who had spent 2 years quietly assembling what she called the real history of Kenyon College,
the parts that didn't make it into official publications. She met him at the campus coffee shop with a folder already prepared.
Like she had been waiting for him to ask. "You want to know about the gate?" she said. It wasn't a question. "I want to know everything," Eli said. Nora opened the folder. "Then start with 1949. February 27th, 1949. Kenyon College. A fire broke out in the old Kenyon dormitory in the middle of the night. 9 students died. 9 young men, asleep in their rooms when the fire started. Some never woke up. Some woke up and could not get out. The fire moved faster than fires should move, through hallways that should have contained it, through doors that should have held it back. 9 students, gone before anyone fully understood what was happening." Nora laid the documentation on the table between them. Photographs, newspaper clippings, university records, the names of the 9. Eli read them slowly. Robert Grist, William Harroway, Frederick Stocker, David Guerin, William Ast, Sherman Baker, Eugene Gabrelski, Barry Sloper, David Sprodsky. 9 names, 9 young men who had gone to sleep in their rooms at Kenyon College on the night of February 27th, 1949, and never woke up again. "The building was rebuilt," Nora said quietly. "Students moved back in. Life continued, the way life does. But the reports started almost immediately after Reconstruction." She turned to a new section of the folder. Student testimonies, going back decades, all describing the same things. Sounds in the hallways of Old Kenyon at night. Not footsteps exactly. Something more urgent than footsteps. Something that sounded, in this word appeared in testimony after testimony, written by different people across different decades. Panicked, in screaming. Not every night, not on schedule, but enough times by enough different people that Nora had been able to document 47 separate reports across 70 years. 47 people who heard screaming in a building where 9 young men burned to death. "The flickering lights," Eli said. "Every electrical report from Old Kenyon going back to the Reconstruction, the maintenance logs are full of it. Lights that flicker on no discernible schedule, lights that go out in specific rooms and come back on by themselves, always the same rooms. The rooms where the 9 died. The rooms where the 9 died," Nora confirmed. Eli stared at the 9 names. "You said start with 1949. What do I end with?" Nora closed the folder. "The gate," she said. "Everything ends with the gate." Before they got to the gate, Nora told him about the pool, about the student known in the decades of whispered campus legend that followed his death as the greenhouse ghost. A young man, a diver, an accident at the college pool that took his life too young, too suddenly, too senselessly. The kind of death that leaves a mark on a place. The kind of death that a campus carries for generations. Students started noticing things around the pool almost immediately, Nora said. What kind of things? Wet footprints, starting at the pool edge, walking through the changing rooms, down the corridor, stopping at the shower area. Someone wet walking from the pool.
Someone wet walking from the pool when no one was in the pool, when the building was locked, when it was 3 a.m. and the facility was closed and there was no physical way a living person could have been there. Eli said nothing. The showers, Nora continued. Maintenance has a file specifically for the pool showers, going back 30 years. Showers that turn themselves on. Hot water, full pressure, in an empty building, at hours when no one should be there. Like someone coming in from the pool and rinsing off. Exactly like that. Every time? Not every time, but often enough that the maintenance staff stopped filing individual reports after a while, started just noting it as, and this is a direct quote from one of the files, the usual pool situation. Eli almost laughed, then stopped himself, because the idea of something being so consistent, so regular, so expected, that the people responsible for the building stopped being surprised by it, was not funny. It was something else entirely. He doesn't seem malevolent, Nora said. The greenhouse ghost. That's what the reports suggest. No one has ever described feeling threatened near the pool, just aware that they are not alone in the building, aware that someone else is using the space. Someone who drowned there? Someone who maybe doesn't know he drowned there. The coffee shop felt smaller than it had when they sat down. "Tell me about the gate," Eli said. Dean Aldrich was a senior, 4 years at Kenyon. He knew every inch of the campus. He had never once broken the rule about the gate, not on a dare, not on a bet, not even when a girl he'd been desperately in love with freshman year had laughed and called him a coward and walked through it alone at midnight just to prove a point. He had stood on the other side, watched her go through, waited. She had come out the other side fine, laughing, calling back to him. He had exhaled. And then he had watched her face change. Just for a moment, just a flicker, like something had passed through her expression. Not fear exactly, more like the look on a person's face when they realize they have forgotten something important, something they cannot quite identify, something that was there a moment ago and is now simply gone. She had laughed it off. He never mentioned what he saw, but he never forgot it either. When Eli sat across from him in his dorm room and asked about the gate, Dean took a long time before answering. "My grandfather went to Kenyon," he finally said. "Class of 1952. Eli frowned. 3 years after the fire. 3 years after the fire. He lived in Old Kenyon during Reconstruction, said the building never felt right again, said something about the air in certain hallways felt used, like the oxygen had been breathed by too many frightened people and never fully refreshed. Did he know the students who died? He knew some of them, not well, the way you know people you share a building with, faces in the hallway, names at the dinner table. Did he talk about the gate? Dean looked at his hands. My grandfather was not a superstitious man. He was an engineer. He believed in what he could measure and calculate and prove. But he told me something once when I got my acceptance letter to Kenyon. He sat me down and he told me one thing and one thing only about the college. What did he say? Dean looked up. He said, "The gate is not decorative. Don't treat it like it is." That's all. That's all. My grandfather, an engineer, a man who had never expressed a supernatural belief in his entire life, sat me down at 18 years old and told me with complete seriousness that the gate at Kenyon College was not decorative. A pause. I asked him what he meant. What did he say? He said, "Some places accumulate. Grief accumulates, fear accumulates, the energy of people who suffered accumulates, and sometimes a structure, a gate, a doorway, a threshold, becomes the point where all of that accumulation concentrates." He said, "Crossing it at the wrong moment is like putting your hand into something that has been gathering for a very long time, and it doesn't let go." Eli did not plan to cross the gate at midnight. He told himself this repeatedly on the night of October 31st. He was there for research, for observation. He wanted to document what happened at the gate at midnight. Watch from the distance, take notes. The journalistic approach. Nora stood beside him at 11:58. She had brought a recorder. The night was cold and clear, and the Ohio sky above Kenyon College was absolutely full of stars. The gate stood at the end of Middle Path, lit by a single lamp on each stone pillar. Old iron, weathered stone, perfectly ordinary. And yet, the campus was unusually quiet. No students on the path, no voices from nearby dormitories. Even the wind had dropped to nothing, like the campus was holding its breath. 11:59. "We're not going through it," Nora said, not a question. "We're not going through it," Eli confirmed. The church bells began, deep, resonant, the kind of sound that you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. 1, 2, 3. On the fourth bell, Eli noticed the light change.
Not the lamp on the pillars, something beyond the gate. The darkness on the other side of the threshold was different from the darkness on their side. Deeper, more concentrated, like the darkness beyond the gate was not simply the absence of light, but the presence of something else entirely. 5, 6, 7. The temperature dropped, not gradually, instantly, like stepping into a freezer. Nora's hand found his arm. 8, 9. Eli! He heard it, on the 9th bell, from beyond the gate. Voices. Not one voice, several, overlapping, urgent, panicked. The sound of people who needed to get out of somewhere and could not find the way. The sound of 9 young men who woke up in a building on fire on February 27th, 1949, and never stopped looking for the exit. 10. 11. The voices rose, and beneath them, below the voices, below the cold, below the concentrated darkness, something else, a feeling, the feeling of being seen, not watched, seen, by something that had been standing on the other side of that gate for a very long time, something that recognized them, something that had been waiting. 12. The bells stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the temperature normalized.
The darkness beyond the gate returned to ordinary darkness. The voices, if they had ever been voices, were gone. Nora's recorder had been running the entire time. They listened back to it immediately, standing right there in the cold, breath visible in the night air. The bells were on the recording. Their voices were on the recording. And beneath their voices, beneath the bells, something else. Faint, almost too faint to hear, but unmistakably there. 9 voices, layered over each other, each saying something different, each speaking with the particular urgency of someone who has been trying to make themselves heard for a very long time. Nora and Eli stood in the cold and listened to the recording 3 times. On the 3rd listen, Eli finally heard what the voices were saying. His throat closed. "What is it?" Nora asked. "What are they saying?" Eli could barely speak.
"They're not warning us," he said. "What? When I first heard it, I thought they were warning us. Stay back, don't cross." "They're not?" Eli looked at the gate, at the old iron, the weathered stone, the ordinary threshold that was not ordinary at all. "They're asking for help," he said. "They've been standing on the other side of that gate for 70 years asking anyone who gets close enough to hear them for help." The night was very quiet around them. "And no one has ever helped them," Nora said softly. "No one has ever stood still long enough to listen." They stood there for a long time, the gate between them and whatever waited beyond it. 9 names running through Eli's mind. Robert, William, Frederick, David, William, Sherman, Eugene, Barry, David. 9 young men who went to sleep at Kenyon College one February night and woke up to fire and smoke and a darkness they never found their way out of. Still there, still asking, still waiting for someone to finally hear them clearly enough to understand. Eli went home and wrote for hours. Everything Nora had told him, everything Dean had said, everything the recording had captured. He wrote the names of the 9. He wrote about the gate. He wrote about the greenhouse ghost and the wet footprints and the showers that turned themselves on in empty buildings. He wrote about a college that had accumulated so much grief in so many decades that the grief had taken up permanent residence. He submitted the piece to his professor at 4 a.m., then sat back and looked at what he had written, and noticed something wrong. At the end of the document, after his final sentence, after the last period, 9 words that he did not remember writing. 9 words, 1 for each of them. We have been here since the bells. We hear you." Eli stared at the screen for a very long time. Then slowly, carefully, he typed below it, "I hear you too." He pressed enter, and from somewhere outside his window, from the direction of Middle Path, from the direction of the gate, the church bells began to ring. At 4 a.m., when no bells should be ringing, one for each of the 9. Then silence. Then, from directly outside his window, the sound of wet footprints, walking slowly up the path, stopping at his door, and a single knock. Patient, calm, like something that had been waiting a very long time for someone to finally listen, and had decided that tonight that person was Eli Warren. Kenyon College calls it the gates of hell, but hell is not what waits on the other side. What waits on the other side is far more heartbreaking than hell. It is 9 young men still calling out, still hoping that this time someone on the other side will finally stop long enough to hear them. And this time, someone did.